Okay, quick video here on doing box counts. Box counts are when you want to have some labels say like 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3 on the label. And there's various ways that you might need to do this, but I'm just going to cover one example here. So we've got on the screen here an invoice 71082 that's got 5 of this, 1 of this, 2 of etc. And let's say for the second item, there's only 1 on the invoice, but it's going to get packed in 2 boxes. So you want it to say 1 of 2, 2 of 2, but the invoice quantity is just 1. In some cases, people just want it to, if there's quantity 3, then you just want it to say 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3, and that's a slightly different example, but both can be easily accomplished with Label Connector. So when you query this invoice in our software, you see it comes up here, shows all the quantities. Now, in any invoice situation with our software, you can change how many labels are going to get printed. So in this case, the invoice quantity was 1, but maybe it's packed in 2 boxes, so you want to change this value to 2, and we can do that. So the print label quantity needs to be modified so that somehow our software knows how many labels to print, right? Because we're not using the invoice quantity anymore. We're wanting to use like a quantity that, based on the way it was packed. So the data source value that we're going to use in our designer is going to be print label quantity to drive, the second value in the 1 of 2, 2 of 2, right? So we need to know how many labels total are going to print, because that's the part that's after the of part. So we would use print label quantity as the second value in the designer, and I'm going to show you this in a minute. Or you could use, if it's never going to change and it's always going to be the invoice quantity that's used as the total amount of boxes to print, then you could use invoice quantity as the data source. So I'm going to go into the designer now, and we'll go ahead and we'll just open up an invoice sample here. So down here is where I'll construct this. So basically there's 3 elements here. Basically the first element is we're going to use a special data source that we've created just for this called item increment. Okay, so we'll just call this inc, and then we'll just I'm going to put an X here for that value. That's the part before the word of, right? And so we'll just use a 16 font. Now this is going to count up with each value, right? It's going to go 1 of 2, 2 of 2, okay? Alright, so that's the part before the of, and then the value that's going to go in the middle is just a static data source, okay, with just the word of there. So we'll just put that on the label, and you only have to do this one time when you're designing, the label, but we put that in as the test data and save. So that's going to be in the middle. That's the easy part. That's the part that just sits in the middle, doesn't do anything. It's just static. And then the last part, there's 2 different ways to do it, right? If you're just going to use the invoice quantity as the number of boxes to print, then we can use, the order quantity. But so we could use invoice quantity if it's never going to change. But if you think you need to be able to edit that and improvise and have the total number of boxes be equal to a value that you edit or the invoice quantity, it'll default to the invoice quantity by default. So this is a good one to use here. Okay, I'm just going to say after, okay, and we'll just put in YY, and we'll just do 16 font and save. So now we've got the 3 elements of our box count constructed here. So we'll save this label, okay, close it. Alright, so the way we increment, just so you know, the part that's after the word of is a line item specific thing. It's not the total of the whole order. If you need us to do the total for the whole order, we can talk to you about that individually, but basically the part that's after the word of is going to be item based. In other words, we're going to count up to 5, 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5, 4 of 5, 5 of 5, and then we're going to start over again on the next item, 1 of 2, 2 of 2, and then etc. down through. So that we call that item incrementing because it starts over with each item. Okay, so we'll just select get order. Okay, and then I'm just to keep this simple, we'll just test for this one item, and so we want two labels to print, one of two, two of two. So we'll just unselect all these. We'll select just this one. Okay, and I'm going to print to a PDF printer. Now this would be different with your label printer, right? This would just print to your label printer immediately, but we're just going to do a PDF test here so you can see it on the screen. And I'm going to go to my sample that I just created. Documents and label connector templates, and we'll go to our invoice template that we had just modified, and we'll just go ahead and print that. And it should produce two PDFs, okay, but this would normally be, you know, done, you know, right away to your label printer. So we'll go, I'm going to put these on the desktop here. So the first one, and then second one. Alright, so those both got created. I'm just going to use the desktop folder view so we can just see that. And so the first one, one of two. Two of two. So just to recap, basically what this involved was 3 different fields in label connector, right? We're going to search. In this case, now we could have used and just left this alone and used the invoice quantity. Like in this case, this would have produced 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5, 4 of 5, etc. We went into the designer. I'll just review how we did the design just really quickly, because that's the trickiest part of this. We created 3 fields. One has item inc or item increment as its data source. Okay, that's the one that's going to count up. This one is just a static data source. That's easy. And then this one, you could either use print label quantity as the data source or the invoice quantity. But if you want the flexibility to be able to edit it, then I use print label quantity. Hope this helps with your box counting needs. Please call AccuWare if you have any questions. There's lots of ways we can do box counts for you. Thanks.